What's up, everybody? It's Mark from Lawn Creeps Limited out here in Villa Park, Illinois, the Garden Village, where we are going to go ahead and talk about some gardening. My gardening passion has actually surpassed my lawn care passion at this point. In all reality, my love for gardening in terms of perennial, ornamental, native plant, native shrubs, native grasses, wildlife-friendly, pollinator-friendly type naturalistic gardening, how you can still use it in your landscape in a great way, and how it ties your whole yard together, your beautiful grass, frames up your house. It really just kind of gives you the complete package of landscape beauty. The discussion I want to get into first and foremost here from a timeline standpoint, it starts at the beginning. You know, cleaning up your beds and all of that stuff in the spring, and taking it back even further than that, the previous fall. Are you letting your perennials stand, or are you cutting them down? There's pros and cons, mostly pros in my book. So let's go ahead and talk about that right now. So yeah, letting your perennials stand over winter. Why would we do that? There's several reasons. One of which is kind of aesthetics, right? You might have heard of winter interest. Winter interest is basically letting those perennials stand over the winter for that fourth season of beauty. I'm talking about ornamental grasses. I'm talking about perennials with some woody sort of stems when they go dormant, that stand upright, that have maybe interesting seed heads or interesting dried blooms. And when that snow falls, right, it kind of graces all those blooms. A certain poetry to that fourth season of dormancy that's just as beautiful in its own way as the peak of the growing season. There's a lot to be said for that. You know, you're looking right outside of your bedroom window all winter during those doldrums. You're looking outside at your garden beds, and all your stuff is still standing. It's got the beautiful snow on it. It piques your interest. It keeps you hungry for gardening. It keeps you thinking about it. Maybe you're thinking about what to do next season. But basically, that's what winter interest is. Beyond winter interest, the other reason, and maybe the main reason why one would leave their perennial beds all pretty much untouched and let stand, is for wildlife reasons. The more that you kind of enjoy your backyard and you see these birds and rabbits and squirrels and critters and little pollinators and other little crazy bugs that come around your perennials, the more you realize that this is all one big circle connected. It all has its part in this thing that lead to your enjoyment, your fulfillment of getting down into that soil and planting something and watching it grow and bloom and flourish, and then watching that little animal come and utilize that thing. It all works together as one. And that's why we want to go ahead and garden for wildlife, for those birds to get in there and utilize these seed heads. This was once purple coneflower. Over the winter, we let it stand, and those birds busted in there and got all of those seeds. All right, you know, people go and they feed the birds in the summer, and once the winter comes around and that cold weather and the snow, they don't want to traipse out there, and they don't want to keep filling that thing. So the birds are left to kind of go back to basics over the winter. So do your part and leave those things stand. You know, same with the black-eyed Susan is a good one, and a lot of other native plants. That's why we would plant native plants, right? Is because it all works in that circle. Even rabbits. I was out here the other day, and when this was a little bit thicker, it was just sitting in the middle of this. It's just something for them to take refuge in. There's so much habitat loss. So much habitat loss, and I get it, right? You know, it's progression. God knows we need another bank, and we need another cell phone place. Habitat loss is real. So it's our backyard, and we're all in this together. Insects, ladybugs, beetles, little pill bugs, little slugs, ants, everything, spiders, all of those guys, amphibians and reptiles, the little toads that eat those slugs, the small mammals, the chipmunks, of course, the squirrels, foxes, raccoon, possum, all of them share our land here. We're all in this together, and we all play a part. They play a bigger part than we do. We just want to make our backyards pretty. And that's where the pollinator talk comes in. All of those pollinators, they take refuge in those hollow stems. They lay their eggs in there over winter. All the solitary bees, the mason bees, the leafcutter type bees, they utilize this stuff as a part of their life cycle. And those pollinators do so much for us. Obviously, it's a video for another time, but it's got to be a part of the discussion when we're talking about gardening. I made this little pollinator hotel here last year, and I do my part. Point being here is that underneath a lot of this stuff that you're kind of leaving in your beds, instead of tidying up every last bit of perennial, is going to be shelter and nooks and crannies where all of those insects and little critters can kind of take refuge over that harsh winter. Larvae of some of those bugs and moths, they can take refuge in here. And then that, of course, is a food source for some of those other critters that we mentioned. Again, with the circle, right? And what does that do for us? It enriches our soil. It creates this stuff. It creates a part of this earth is food and material for those earthworms to work with and break down. As it decomposes, they create this beautiful, nutrient-rich, loose, loamy, aerated soil that's going to be able to produce big, beautiful, strong root systems for these plants. Truth be told, I actually apply the same principles to my grass as well. You want to leave this stuff as undisturbed as you can. I don't even till very much anymore. Not to mention the fact that leaving a lot of these leaves and a lot of this stuff stand, you're kind of protecting the crown of that plant. You're insulating it and kind of keeping it blanketed from weather extremes and stuff like that. Spring kicks in, and then you can kind of cut this down, tidy everything up, and then see what's growing, see what's what from there. I think there's a bit of a misconception that by cutting your stuff down in the fall, you kind of help the plant sort of grow back the next year, and that's not the case. That's not the case. It grows back fine, and then in the spring, when the conditions that are conducive to growing really kick in, then you can kind of tend it and help it along a little bit. But even then, wait until they do start growing back out. If I cut everything back at the end of the year, I wouldn't really know where stuff is early spring. If I am raking and tending this a little bit, I could be, raking a crown out or stepping on stuff and all of that. So leaving it stand, a self-seeding plant will actually kind of expand its width and its spot in the garden and grow vigorously and more robust. And you can in turn sort of divide that in the later spring and give it to friends and move it into different sections of your yard. I definitely get the theory of tidying up your yard and your garden beds and your entire property going into winter, so you can come into the spring completely clean with a blank canvas and all of that stuff. The only time I would do that is if you're dividing stuff. I would then prune it down. Also, if some of those stalks are sort of bent over and cracked and maybe doing stuff where it's going to mess with the crown of that plant, then I'll cut it down. It's no big deal. Or if there was a fungal disease, if bee balm maybe had a bunch of powdery mildew on it, or your rugosa that has a whole bunch of leaf spots, you want to get all of those leaves out of there, out of that soil around the crown of the plant and stuff like that, and in the vicinity, and get that out of there, cut it down, and eliminate that for the season to not have it come back next year as bad or at all. So I guess the last part of this discussion would be, well, when do I really start to kind of tend to my beds in the spring then? Because we always get that 60-degree day in early spring where all of a sudden we think that we're just ready to go. Let's get out there. We're going to do everything right now. Some of the clips that are in this video, I was like right in the middle of that mindset. But you want to wait. At this time, you stay glued to the weather forecast, right? You're going to start seeing stuff coming out of the ground right now. But once stuff really starts getting going, you kind of know what's what. It's usually early May. They say that our last danger of frost around these parts here in the Midwest is around May 10th. So that's when you really have the green light to really start going gung-ho there. So don't jump the gun on it. Definitely start getting out in there a little bit. But other than that, we're almost there. So anyways, that's something to think about. Maybe you leave some stuff go for the reasons I mentioned. But if you're still kind of just sold on the fact that you should just put it all to bed, cut everything down, and sterilize your property going into the winter, then that's cool too. If that's your thing, you got a blank canvas come spring, I get that. No one's right, no one's wrong, and it's all experimental, learn as you go, and that's the fun of this thing. Gardening is a journey. I know that's cliche, but it's very true. Do what you feel, use your gut, You know, and garden how you want to garden, man. Letting your perennials stand for those benefits, even if you're not real hardcore with the wildlife aspect of it, it's still a good idea, you know, for some of the soil nutrition and just kind of overall health of the plant and stuff like that. Or you're lazy. You could be lazy. So yeah, anywho, I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I'm really looking forward to more and more garden talk as we go, in addition to the lawn care talk. Come on back for the next one, and we'll catch you later.
Lawn creeps
and garden geeks.